Hi, I'm Isabella. And last year, I overheard my wealthy sister tell our parents, "Don't worry, I'll make her pay for everything." At first, I thought it was a joke, some flippant family sarcasm. But it wasn't. It was a plan. A detailed, rehearsed plan, using my name, my money, my silence. They took my savings, rewrote my role in the family, and handed my identity to the one person who never needed it. She got the praise. I got the bills. And when I tried to confront them, they said I was being too emotional. Now I'm wondering, was I ever really their daughter, or just the emergency fund they could guilt into anything? Want to hear how deep this betrayal goes? Let me tell you. The lasagna was still warm. I just pulled it from my back seat, holding it carefully with both hands, wrapped in an old dish towel my mom gave me years ago. I always brought something to Sunday dinner, even though no one ever asked me to. It was my way of saying, I'm here, I care, I'm still trying. The drive from my apartment in downtown Portland to their suburban house took about 45 minutes. I made it every week without fail, no matter how many hours I worked, no matter how exhausted I felt, because that's what you do for family. Or at least, that's what I believed. The smell of garlic bread wafted through the screen door. Laughter floated from inside. The kind that came easy to people who didn't have to second-guess whether they belonged. I stepped up the porch, one foot on the mat, one hand reaching for the door. Then I heard her voice. Callista. Don't worry, I'll make her pay for everything. At first, I didn't think it was about me. I mean, why would it be? But then Dad chuckled, in that way he does when he's impressed. And Mom, softer, hesitant, asked, You think she'll agree? Callista responded without pause. She always does. Just throw in a few tears. She folds faster than cheap luggage. My hand froze mid-air. Inside, chairs shifted. Glasses clinked. Someone started a new sentence, but I didn't hear the words anymore. The lasagna dish felt heavier in my hands. My grip tightened around the towel. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I stood there, just inches from knocking, realizing I was never meant to be part of the conversation inside. I was just the topic. And not in a way that meant I was loved. Not in the way I'd hoped. They weren't whispering. They weren't even trying to hide it. It was casual, like gossip about the neighbor's overgrown lawn. Except this wasn't about weeds. It was about me. I stepped back, one careful step so the porch wouldn't creak. Then another, and another. My shoes met the pavement like it wasn't even real. I reached my car, opened the door, placed the lasagna dish in the passenger seat as if I still believed I might need it. Then I sat down, hands gripping the wheel, but not starting the engine. Just sat. A dozen memories flashed through my head like a highlight reel. The $20,000 I gave Callista to launch her PR agency. The bonus I handed Mom when Dad had that heart scare. No questions asked. Not once did I ask for it back. Not once did they offer. I'd lived on ramen during grad school, so I could save enough to help them when they needed it. And all this time, I thought that made me generous. Turns out, it made me convenient. The car was silent, except for the soft ticking of the engine cooling. Outside, the sun dipped lower. Inside the house, laughter rose again. Then came the buzz. My phone lit up. Callista. Hey sis, dinner's almost ready. So glad you're here. Then Mom. Sweetie, come inside. Dad's hungry. I stared at the screen like it had betrayed me too. That text wasn't an invitation. It was a performance. They knew I was out here. They were pretending I hadn't heard a thing. I didn't respond right away. I let the text linger like smoke in a closed room. And then I replied, Emergency at work. I'll have to take a rain check. It wasn't true, but it wasn't a lie either. There was an emergency, right here, inside me. I dropped the phone in my lap, leaned my head against the window, and stared straight ahead. The street was empty. The house I grew up in felt like a stranger's. My hand brushed against the casserole dish. Still warm, still untouched. I thought about walking it up to the front door anyway, leaving it on the mat like some peace offering. But peace only works if both sides want it. My phone buzzed again. Callista. No worries. We can chat later about that house thing. Love you. I blinked at the message. That house thing? What house thing? I stared at my phone longer than I should have, trying to make sense of her words. That house thing? I hadn't agreed to anything. I hadn't even heard of anything. And yet, there it was, casually dropped into a text like it had already been decided, like I was part of a plan no one bothered to explain. 3 days passed. I didn't reply. I didn't ask. I just went back to work, answered emails, made spreadsheets sing. I played the role of the functional adult because that's what you do when your foundation starts to crack. You walk evenly, so no one hears it breaking. That Thursday, I came home to a padded envelope sticking out of my mailbox. Thick cardstock, my name written in soft cursive. No return address, but I recognized the penmanship. Callista's assistant, probably. Inside was a glossy invitation, cream and gold, the kind you'd expect for a charity gala, not a family milestone. My parents' 40th anniversary party. The invitation was elegant, curated, just like everything Callista touched. My eyes landed on the header, hosted by Callista Winters. Below that, in smaller font, in honor of Ronan and Marla Winters. I looked for my name. There it was, misspelled. Isabel. No title, no note of contribution, just a footnote in the guest list. And Callista? She appeared twice, once as host, once as guest of honor. I sank into the kitchen chair, invitation in hand, like it had weight. 10 years ago, I gave them the down payment for that house they're celebrating in. I dipped into my first-year bonus, thinking I was keeping them afloat. There was no announcement then, no gold foil envelope, just a thanks over lukewarm coffee and a comment from Mom about how I always land on my feet. Now this. The next morning, I checked the digital RSVP site, more out of curiosity than anything else. Everyone had titles: nephew, best friend, colleague. Even some distant cousin from Indiana got listed as family historian. Me? +1. Unknown. Paired with someone I hadn't seen since I was 8. I sent a quick text to Mom. Hey, I think there's a typo on the invite and guest list. Can we fix it? She replied 2 hours later. Oh, honey, it's not that big a deal. Don't be dramatic. There it was. I stared at that message, my thumb hovering over the screen. No apology, no correction, just dismissal wrapped in faux affection. I called her. It rang twice before she answered. Sweetie, everything okay? I just wanted to ask about the invitation, I said carefully. It felt a little off. There was a pause. Then her voice shifted, brittle and clipped. Isabella, honestly, you're always so sensitive. Your sister does everything for us. You think organizing an event like this is easy? That's not, I started, but she cut me off. You always act like a victim. It's exhausting. I'm sorry if your feelings are hurt, but you're not the only one with responsibilities. There it was again, that familiar burn. Not just the words, but the pattern. The way my concerns became a character flaw. The way she never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her disappointment was its own language. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I thanked her for her time and hung up. Afterward, I sat on the floor beside my bookshelf, pulling out old photo albums. Birthdays, graduations, holidays. In every group shot, Callista stood in the middle, smiling, radiant. And me, blurry, cut off at the edge, forgotten behind someone's shoulder. I found one from my college graduation. Everyone clapped for Callista's new PR job during my celebration dinner. I remember holding my diploma in one hand, the other on a check I gave Dad to cover their mortgage that month. I pulled that photo from the frame and slipped it into the trash. Later that night, as I hovered over the RSVP page, ready to click No, a new email came in. From Callista. Looking forward to seeing you. We need to chat about something important. Callista. I didn't open it again. You can't erase someone and then ask them to show up smiling. I didn't reply to Callista's email. I didn't even open it again. Whatever something important she wanted to discuss could wait. Indefinitely. That night, I deleted the event from my calendar and tucked the invitation into the recycling bin without ceremony. A few days later, I was reorganizing the filing cabinet in my living room, mostly out of habit, not purpose. There wasn't much left in my control, but I could control folders and labels. I was sorting through old leases and health insurance claims when I found a manila envelope near the back. It was addressed in my mother's handwriting. To our baby girl, happy birthday. My fingers paused on the flap. I hadn't opened this one in years. Inside was a neatly folded document printed on heavy bond paper. I unfolded it and saw the title across the top. Transfer of property, residential deed. The address was familiar. My parents' house in Beaverton. I remembered that dinner now, the birthday toast. Callista's dramatic presentation of the envelope, tied with gold ribbon. Her smile had been huge. Too big. "You've earned this," she said, holding her wine glass high. "Your name's finally on something real. You're not just the background player anymore." Everyone laughed. I cried a little. I thought it was gratitude. For 3 years, I believed I owned that house, that the document was a symbol of trust, of finally being seen. But as I stared at it again, alone in my apartment, no wine, no applause, I noticed something I'd missed back then. Tiny footnotes, legal terms I didn't fully understand. A clause marked retained primary interest under my parents' names. Language that made my stomach clench. The next morning, I took the paper to my coworker, Janelle, who'd worked in real estate before switching to finance. We met at a coffee shop near the office, our laptops between us, her glasses pushed to the edge of her nose. She scanned the document in silence, then leaned back and gave me a long, quiet look. "This isn't a gift," she said. "This is a legal transfer of ownership away from you. They used your signature to relinquish any claim you might have had. This isn't giving you the house, it's taking you off of it." My mouth went dry. "But they said," she cut in gently, "that's what they wanted you to believe." I walked home that evening through the drizzle, replaying every moment from that birthday dinner. The applause, the wine, the way my dad had avoided eye contact when I signed the page. How Callista had redirected the conversation immediately after, launching into a story about her new client. They dressed up a betrayal and handed it to me with dessert. Back at home, I laid out everything. Bank transfer receipts, the deed, even text messages from that night. I saw the pattern emerge like ink rising on old paper. Callista always looked like the giver. I was always the one paying the cost. They told me it was a gift, but the paperwork said otherwise, and the county clerk confirmed it when I called the next morning. "It's been under Ronan and Marla Winters since 2 weeks after that date," she said without hesitation. "Was there any amendment after that?" "No, ma'am, not since then. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I scanned every document, labeled every file, backed it all up on an encrypted drive labeled "for attorney only." I renamed each file like I was writing chapter titles. Gift or transfer. The dinner deception. Silenced signing. That evening, while sipping lukewarm tea, I checked my phone out of habit. A notification from Facebook blinked across the screen. Callista had posted the official flyer for the anniversary party. Same photo, same caption. "So grateful to be surrounded by love and legacy. Blessed serve family first." I stared at it for a long time. She was curating her image again, crafting a legacy on my back, with my silence as her foundation. I whispered to the empty room, "Let's see how blessed you feel when the truth has a timestamp." I didn't reply to the post. I didn't like it. I didn't comment. But I downloaded the image, because I had a feeling I'd need it later. Not for proof. For memory. For reminding myself just how cleanly someone could crop you out and still call it family. The rehearsal dinner for my parents' anniversary was held at a sleek event space downtown. Exposed brick, dim chandeliers, the kind of place where small talk came with custom cocktails. I hadn't wanted to go, but part of me needed to see it for myself. Not the celebration, the architecture of the lie. I arrived alone, on time, with a modest box wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Inside was a photo frame with a picture of our family from years ago, before the erasure had begun. I placed it on the gift table, nestled behind Callista's oversized orchid arrangement. No one noticed. Callista greeted me from across the room with a nod. No hug, no, "You made it." She looked through me, then turned her attention back to her circle of assistants, planners, and carefully selected family friends. I wandered to the edge of the room, where I'd been assigned a seat by the dessert trays. No name card, no mention on the welcome banner. Just a place to sit. As the background music shifted from strings to jazz, I caught a snippet of conversation from two of Callista's interns near the projection screen. "We just need her in the group photo," one of them said. "She balances the symmetry." I let that sink in. I wasn't there for my parents. I wasn't even there for decorum. I was there to make their curated image look believable. The evening dragged on. Polite conversation, glasses clinking, more laughter in corners I wasn't invited to join. I stayed quiet, like I always had, until it was time for the toasts. Callista took the mic with her signature confidence, heels clicking against the floor like punctuation. "We are so proud of this milestone," she began, "of our parents' unwavering love, their sacrifices, and of the family they built, flawed, yes, but forged in something deeper." I waited to hear my name. I expected to be mentioned, even briefly. Instead, someone near the back raised a glass and called out, "Don't forget the quiet one." The room chuckled. Callista smiled sweetly and turned to me. "Ah, yes. Our wild card, not by blood, but definitely in the mix." She raised her glass again. "To family, chosen or not." Laughter rippled. I heard someone whisper nearby, "Wait, she's adopted?" And just like that, it wasn't a secret anymore. My fork paused mid-air. My heartbeat didn't spike. It dropped, slowed. A different kind of stillness. That information had always been private. Not because I was ashamed, but because it wasn't a party trick. It wasn't for public commentary, and certainly not for a punchline. I stood quietly, placed my napkin on my chair, and slipped out the side exit before the next toast could start. No one followed. Outside, I didn't call a car. I didn't pull out my phone. I just started walking. 3 miles, in heels. Through the Pearl District, past boutiques I couldn't afford, restaurants I'd once suggested for family dinners, but had been vetoed for being too small for Callista's presence. My skin stung where my straps rubbed. My breath fogged in front of me. I didn't care. "You don't choose how you arrive in a family," I murmured to myself. "But you can choose when to leave one." By the time I got home, my feet were throbbing. I peeled off my shoes at the door and sat in the dark for a moment. Then I opened my laptop and texted Kieran. "Let's move the meeting up. I want everything reviewed, financially, legally, emotionally." Later that night, I scrolled through my feed, instinctively checking Callista's page, and there it was, the first photo from the event. She stood at the center of a beaming crowd, champagne in hand. My parents flanked her on either side, extended family smiling behind them. And me? I wasn't there. Cropped out so cleanly, it looked like I never attended. Caption: "Family is who shows up for you, always." I stared at the screen, unmoved. I clicked download, labeled the file, "Proof of intent, I'll show up." Just not the way she expected. The following morning, I stood in line at a cafe 3 blocks from the courthouse, watching steam curl above a dozen lattes, while the weight of everything I discovered settled somewhere behind my collarbone. Kieran waved from the corner table, already seated with her laptop open and a manila folder I'd dropped off the night before. One labeled Callista Documents, printed in neat block letters. I joined her, took off my coat, and sipped my coffee before speaking. She didn't waste time. "Isabella," she began, "I've reviewed what you gave me, and there's something you need to see." She turned her laptop so the screen faced me. A scanned loan document popped up, $75,000. Personal business funds, my name across the top, my digital signature at the bottom. I blinked. I never applied for a loan. Kieran nodded slowly. I know, but everything checks out. The signature is yours, at least a perfect replica. The contact info, phone number, email, all tied to you. But this isn't your account. It was processed through a business registered to Callista 6 months ago. I felt something in my stomach shift. A drop, like stepping onto an elevator that forgot how to stop. She didn't just use my name, I said quietly. She used my credit, my identity. And made you liable, Kieran added, voice sharp. If this defaults, you'll be the one they call, not her. For a minute, I didn't say anything. My brain was too busy running every memory, every vague conversation, every moment I'd been told, don't worry, it's just a mock-up, or I'll handle the paperwork. And then, like clockwork, I remembered the lunch. 3 months ago, we sat by the window at a French place she liked to be seen at. The server called her by name. She talked about investing, how I needed to build visible credibility. You're already doing great, she said, flashing that polished, practiced smile. But imagine how much more leverage you'd have if you showed up on a few boards, or got involved in strategic lending opportunities. I'd laughed it off. She'd pulled out her laptop anyway. Just a quick pre-qualification form. It's non-binding, just to see what might be possible. I'd nodded, distracted, letting her fill it out while I paid the check. Now I stared at the loan agreement. The file name on Kieran's screen read, Isabella Winters Final Submit.pdf. That form, that wasn't a test. That was the move. Back in my apartment, I opened every financial portal I had access to. Bank accounts, retirement funds, credit tracking services, set up alerts, reset passwords, froze my credit. My hands moved fast, but my mind was ice cold. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't rant. I wouldn't post dramatic videos or cryptic captions. I would document. Because that's what Callista never expected. She banked on my silence. My civility. My lifelong habit of smoothing things over. But I wasn't smoothing this. I was archiving it. I drafted an email to her next. One line. I'm reviewing some recent documents and noticed your name on several. I suggest you get legal counsel. She responded within 5 minutes. You're being paranoid. We're family. Don't blow this out of proportion. Let's meet and talk like adults. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded her email to Kieran with a simple note. Prepare a restraining order draft. Also, have someone check if she ever had my power of attorney. I wouldn't be surprised. That night, I stood by the window with the city stretching quiet around me. The same view I'd always had. But something was different. In the glass reflection, I didn't see the version of me who once begged to be invited, included, understood. She was gone. What stared back now was someone who knew how to carry silence like a blade. Let her cry at the dinner table. I'll be the one holding the receipts. The sun had just started to edge over the horizon when the delivery driver buzzed my apartment. I didn't remember ordering anything, but when I signed for the envelope and saw Kieran's handwriting across the flap, block letters, underlined twice, I knew this wasn't a package. It was a reckoning. I set the coffee I hadn't yet sipped down and opened the envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, a stack of documents, credit bureau statements, transaction trails, notarized confirmation of identity use, 2 personal loans, both opened in my name, both tied directly to Callista's business operations. One had gone toward resolving a tax settlement, the other funded a branding refresh for her staging company. Each page felt heavier than the last. I stood there reading with the same clarity you feel before impact, when time slows but your mind doesn't flinch. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern, and I wasn't in denial anymore. They weren't just debts. They were messages. You'll pay, they said over and over again, because you always do. That afternoon, I made my way across town to the credit bureau's regional office. No makeup, hair in a bun, flats instead of heels. I didn't go to make a scene, I went for facts. Inside, a woman named Trish pulled up my file on her screen and frowned almost instantly. "You flagged these accounts, correct?" "Yes," I replied. She leaned in, tapped her keyboard. "There's something odd. The contact email used here, it matches a domain registered to Winter's PR Group." I didn't say anything. Trish looked at me, gently but pointed. "Whoever submitted this application knew everything. Your SSN, employment history, address, even the security question answers." "So it wasn't a hack?" "No, ma'am," she said softly. "This wasn't outside. This was someone very, very close." The drive back to Beaverton was quiet. No radio, just the hum of tires against wet pavement. I didn't plan to stop at the house, but my hands turned the wheel anyway. The backyard was as I remembered it. Meticulously trimmed hedges, white roses in bloom. The stone path swept clean. My father was out there, clippers in hand, trimming the bushes like it was any other Tuesday. He looked up, surprised but not unsettled. "Didn't expect you." I walked over slowly, handed him the folder. "This is everything she's done using my name," I said evenly. "Read it." He didn't open it. He glanced down at the first page, then handed it back. "You should talk to your sister. She knows how these things work." It wasn't what he said. It was how little it cost him to say it. No denial, no outrage, not even confusion. Just a redirect. Like this wasn't betrayal, just bookkeeping. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I tucked the folder back into my bag, nodded once, and left. He didn't defend her. He didn't question me. That was his answer. His loyalty wasn't to right or wrong. It was to quiet, to keeping the peace, to letting Callista remain untouchable. Back at my apartment, I opened the secure document vault Kieran had set up, the one labeled Winter's Case Materials. It had been mostly empty, until now. I uploaded everything, the credit reports, the fraudulent loan documents, screenshots of Callista's emails. I added a cover note. "Push the first domino. I want this trail to go all the way up." Then I renamed the files. Debt 1, Callista Corp Front. Debt 2, Rebranding Project. Ronan, complicit by silence. I didn't shake. I didn't flinch. I watched the upload bar fill, and I felt, for the first time in weeks, solid. That evening, as I sat down to dinner alone, my phone buzzed. A new notification. "You have been removed from the Family Trust Access Portal." I clicked the link. Logan failed. No error code. No explanation. They'd shut the door. Good thing I'd already built my own. The email came in the next morning from Kieran's paralegal. No subject line. Just a link and 2 words. "You ready?" I clicked it. The screen loaded slowly, pulling up a PDF from our shared legal folder. I scanned the header. Authorization to transfer funds, client marketing campaign. A document I vaguely remembered. At the time, Callista had handed it to me during brunch. She wore one of her networking blazers, talking fast, waving her hands like she was sculpting air. "Just a dummy layout," she'd said. "Helps with pitch decks. You don't have to sign anything. It's just to show potential donors that we have structure." I had nodded, distracted by the server asking about my eggs. Now I saw it again, with a bank's timestamp, confirmation ID, and routing activity tied directly to my investment account. The signature was mine. The funds, $14,200 transferred to Callista's media firm. This was the one that cleared, Kieran confirmed on our call later that morning. Not a draft, not a test. The real thing. The world didn't tilt. It focused. She hadn't tricked me once. She'd built her entire fundraising pipeline on pieces of me. I went back through my own records, starting with the folder labeled Charitable Deductions. It was where I tracked the few causes I personally supported: underprivileged women, tech scholarships, school lunch programs. Then I noticed something odd. A $25,000 donation, credited to the Winters Foundation, had gone to a shelter I had donated to privately 6 months ago. I pulled up the image from the shelter's website, Callista standing in front of a novelty check, her name printed bold across the top. I zoomed in on the routing number in the photo. It matched my account. So, she took my money and stamped her name on it. Again. I texted Kieran, "I want full account activity reviewed for the last 18 months, every penny." Her reply was short, "Already on it." By Thursday, the retaliation plan was in motion. Kieran filed preliminary paperwork for fraud-based recovery. A freeze was placed on all financial assets tied to any shared accounts. Cease and desist letters were sent to Callista's company, her accountant, and, just for good measure, her social media manager. I made one specific request. Send the legal notice to her office, not her home. I want her to read it in heels. Later that day, I logged into the private donor portal of one of the shelters I had contributed to. There was a tab for Major Benefactor Profiles. I flagged the Winters alias account for review, citing potential identity misrepresentation. It didn't take long. Within 48 hours, Callista's name vanished from 3 community websites. Her photo disappeared from 2 of them. The third replaced hers with a generic donor support provided by caption. The director of one nonprofit sent me a personal email. "We've been notified of a financial conflict involving your family name. Until it's resolved, we're conducting an internal audit. Thank you for bringing this to our attention." I didn't reply. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city, I poured a glass of water and scrolled through Callista's social feed. I expected silence. Instead, I saw a cryptic post from her assistant. A story, with a black background and white text. In times like these, the truth isn't always what it seems, but light always wins. The comments started immediately. What happened? Is this about the shelter donations? Wait, did she get dropped? I put my phone down, didn't smile, didn't flinch. Let her build her brand on smoke. I'll be the wind. The ballroom buzzed with low conversation, the kind that floats between chandelier clinks and violins trying too hard to drown out tension. It was Callista's show. Every inch of the room screamed curated perfection. Gold chargers, linen napkins folded into peacocks, centerpieces taller than cents. I didn't belong here. Not in the way they thought I did. 2 tables away from the head, I sat alone. A place card missing where my name should have been. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even hurt. That part of me had been shaved away months ago, replaced with something colder, more exacting. My parents were seated with Callista, flanked by donors and distant relatives who knew her from magazine covers, not memories. She beamed like a politician on election night, flawless, rehearsed, untouchable. I waited. When dessert plates were cleared and lights dimmed slightly, Callista took the stage. Her speech was exactly what I expected. Stories of perseverance, sacrifice, and of course, family unity. Her voice was syruped just enough to mask the steel underneath. Halfway through, I stood. I didn't rush. I didn't stumble. I walked straight to the AV table and handed the tech a small silver USB. He looked confused. I leaned in. "This is pre-cleared with the venue. Play it after her next line, no warning." He hesitated. I nodded once, slowly. "Trust me." Back at my seat, I folded my hands in my lap and waited. Callista raised her glass, finishing a line about legacy. The screen behind her flickered. Then, audio. Her voice. Unedited. Unmistakable. "We'll just have her sign it. She won't ask questions. She never does." Pause. "It's not like she understands what power of attorney means." Another pause. "Just tell her it's for the family. She's easy when Mom cries." The room stilled. Chairs shifted. Someone near the back gasped. The screen changed. Bank transfers, loan authorizations, every piece of evidence Kieran and I had compiled. My name in digital ink. Callista's firm listed as a recipient. The timestamp in the bottom corner pulsing like a heartbeat. Callista's hand froze midair, glass trembling slightly. Mom covered her mouth. Dad looked down and didn't look up again. I stood. No theatrics, just truth. In case there's any confusion, I said clearly, yes, that's her voice. And yes, those are my accounts. No one interrupted. Even the violins had stopped. I turned to my parents, locked eyes with my mother, then Callista. I was never your daughter, I said evenly. I was your budget line item. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone near the front whispered, "Isn't that illegal?" Another voice added, "That sounded like fraud." Callista opened her mouth to speak, closed it, clutched the mic like it might anchor her to something that hadn't already slipped away. I left before she could recover. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. Crisp, clean. A reminder that some things still made sense. I stepped onto the curb. A journalist I vaguely recognized from a local blog approached, notebook in hand, phone already recording. "Miss Winters, would you like to comment?" I didn't stop walking, but I slowed just enough to give her something. "Not yet," I said, "but you'll want to stay tuned." Back at home, I kicked off my shoes and dropped my bag near the door. I made tea, sat in silence, and watched the ripple unfold online. The first posts hit before midnight, snippets of the audio, freeze frames of the spreadsheet, screenshots of Callista's face, frozen mid-word. Within an hour, hashtags started trending. Winters fraud, banked on her sister, legacy built on lies. I didn't comment, didn't share, didn't need to. They wrote a legacy. I just turned the page. By the second morning, the fallout had gone national. Local news ran the story on loop. Sound bites from the audio, stills from the gala, call-ins from anonymous sources who once interned for Callista. I didn't need to watch it to know the script. I lived it. My phone buzzed so often I had to silence it. Some calls came from numbers I recognized. Distant cousins, former coworkers, even one of Callista's ex-colleagues. Most went unanswered, but there was one text that made me pause. From an unknown number. "They're calling her donations fraudulent. Legal may get involved." I closed the message, let the phone fall face down on the counter. She had always been so careful with optics, so calculated in what people saw. But the truth, once lit, had a way of refusing to dim. That afternoon, I received a message from a friend who worked in tech. She'd found something while browsing Callista's company website. "You might want to see this," it said. Attached, a screenshot of the bio page. The original version had said, "Callista Winters, founder, innovator, inspired by the strength of her sister, Isabella, and the love of family." The new version had one clean sentence. "Callista Winters, self-made leader, driven by resilience." No mention of me, not even a trace. I went to my own nonprofit profile to check. My name was still listed under major donors, but instead of Isabella Winters, it now read, "Anonymous." It wasn't just theft of money anymore. It was erasure, a rewrite in real time. "It wasn't enough to steal from me," I muttered, closing the browser. She needed the world to believe I was never there. The next day, I drove to the storage unit I hadn't visited in years. It sat behind a chain-link fence and an old diner with a faded sign. I punched in the code with hands steadier than I expected. Inside, among half-filled boxes of textbooks and kitchen tools, I found the one labeled "Dad's Stuff." Black Sharpie letters, yellowed edges. I'd taken it with me the day he'd cleared the garage and offered to toss anything you don't need. I hadn't opened it since. Beneath some tax folders and rusted garden tool catalogs, I found a sealed envelope tucked into a leather-bound planner. My name was written across it in block letters, unmistakably his. For Isabella, only if things go too far. I sat cross-legged on the cold concrete floor and broke the seal. It wasn't typed. It wasn't formal. Just his handwriting, shaky in places, deliberate in others. "Isabella, I've watched things I should have stopped. I told myself you were strong enough to carry it, and maybe that made it easier to look the other way. Maybe I wanted to believe you'd be fine without needing me to say it out loud. But I was wrong. I should have said this sooner. You were always the one holding the weight. You deserve to be seen. I hope you finally are. There were no tears, just air, and breath, and a quiet understanding that this didn't fix anything, but it said something I hadn't even known I needed to hear. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then I reached into the box again and pulled out an old photo, me and Dad at a baseball game. I was 7, sunburned, grinning with missing teeth. He had his arm around me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. I kept that too. That night, back home, I sat at my desk, staring at the glow of the screen. I drafted a post. Nothing dramatic, just a marker. This isn't revenge, this is redirection, and I'm walking it fully. It went up quietly. No tags, no hashtags, just words. A few hours later, I got a single comment from a small shelter I'd once donated to without fanfare. "We see you, always did." I stared at that for a long time. I didn't need to burn the legacy, just expose the parts that were already ash. I watched the morning news from a quiet corner in Karayan's office, sipping coffee that had long since gone cold. The screen was muted, but the captions rolled steadily, dragging Callista's name across every ticker. PR mogul accused of misappropriation. Humanitarian award withdrawn amidst scandal. From philanthropy to fraud? Kieran's receptionist peeked in with a sympathetic glance. "They just played the audio again," she said softly. "Twice." I didn't look up. I didn't need to. Across the room, Kieran muted her phone and walked over, holding a letter in one hand. Heavy envelope, thick cardstock, the kind used for awards and weddings. "Oregon Humanitarian Council," she said. "Want me to open it?" I nodded. She read it quickly, then set it on the table between us. I leaned forward and scanned the line that mattered. "In light of recent disclosures regarding fraudulent misrepresentation and donor identity misuse, the Oregon Humanitarian Council formally rescinds the 2024 Humanitarian Award nomination of Callista Winters." My chest didn't swell. There was no satisfaction spike, just a steady, quiet calm. Kieran cleared her throat. "They also sent a public statement. It'll go live at noon." "Let them." She gave a thin smile. "I didn't think you'd want to release one." "I don't," I said. "I'm done performing." By afternoon, Callista's agency had entered what media types called reputation lockdown. Her publicist resigned. Her executive assistant posted a vague goodbye message, followed by a flurry of unfollows across social media. The website for She Wins, her personal empowerment brand, went dark. Homepage stripped, contact form disabled, all articles taken down. Then came the leaks. An anonymous source from her team told a local blogger, "She built her platform off her sister's back. We just didn't know how literal that was." The quote was everywhere within hours. By dinner, it was trending. I didn't post a single thing. Kieran handled all media inquiries with a single line. "Ms. Winters has no comment at this time and is focused on closing this chapter legally and ethically." I went for a walk. The street outside Callista's office looked different now. There was a protest forming, small but focused. A few people held handmade signs. One stood out in sharp black letters. "Charity without consent is not charity." I didn't stop, just walked past. No sunglasses, no disguise. Let them see. That night, I received an email from the local shelter, the one Callista had used my donation to boost her own image. "We'd like to invite you to be honored at our spring gala," it said. "Your quiet generosity has made more impact than you know." I read it twice before typing my reply. "Thank you for the kind offer. I'd prefer not to speak at the event, but I've attached a private donation. No public acknowledgement needed. Just make the help louder than the harm." The next morning, I opened a new bank account. Under my name only, no co-signers, no trust fund deposits, no shared access. The banker smiled as she handed me the folder of forms. First time opening an account with us? I looked at the empty signature line, my own hand hovering above it. No, I said. First time doing it as just me? There was no applause. No applause needed. Turns out silence wasn't surrender. It was setup. The sun was just beginning to burn off the morning haze when I sat down on a wooden bench at Forest Park, coffee in hand. I wasn't there for peace or scenery. I was just still, for once, not running toward or away from anything. The quiet let me breathe in a way I hadn't realized I needed. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I didn't move. Let it ring out. Not even 2 minutes later, a voicemail popped up. I hesitated, then pressed play. Isabella, it's me. Please, just hear me out. We didn't know it would get this far. She's not okay. We need to talk. I stared at the trees ahead, not surprised, not moved, just tired. That evening, I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Marla stood there. No earrings, no foundation. Her hair, usually set to perfection, was pulled into a soft clip. For a moment, I didn't recognize her, not because of how she looked, but because of how small she seemed. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table like we had years ago. Her with a cup of tea, me with nothing but folded arms and measured silence. She's breaking down, Marla began. Losing clients, friends. She won't eat, won't sleep. I didn't respond. If you could just, I don't know, talk to her. I set my hands down flat on the table. If I could just fix it, again. Marla's eyes filled. She looked away. We didn't mean to choose her over you, we just didn't know how to stop her? I finished for her. She nodded, voice barely audible. She was always the loud one, the shining one. I let that hang in the air. You didn't try, I said, voice steady. That's what I can't forgive. The silence between us wasn't hostile. It was real. Thick with everything we'd never said and never would. After she left, I pulled out the journal I'd been writing in since the first crack in this entire facade. I flipped to a clean page. She came for Callista, I wrote. Not for me. It wasn't an apology. It was a transaction request. And maybe that was what it had always been. My presence as currency. My silence, my kindness, my usefulness. Bartered until I was empty. I'd confused tolerance with love. Confused survival with strength. I was never the disappointment, I wrote. I was the deposit. A few days later, I visited Mrs. Langford, my old high school teacher, who once stayed after school 3 days a week to help me apply for scholarships when no one at home had the time. We drank tea in her garden. You always carried too much, she said, after hearing just enough. I'm glad you finally put it down. That night, I sat on my sofa, phone in hand. A voicemail from Callista, 2 weeks old. Unplayed. I deleted it. No ceremony, no speech. Just a soft click. Gone. Later, I pulled out a piece of stationery. One of the nice ones with pressed edges. Not to send, just to write. To my mother, the one I wanted you to be. I wrote quickly, not stopping to edit or reread. You had a daughter who loved you. She just wasn't loud enough to be seen over the golden one. I folded it neatly and placed it in the back of my desk drawer, behind tax returns and old notebooks. I wasn't grieving who they were. I was letting go of who I'll never be to them. 2 weeks after I tucked that letter into the back of my drawer, Kieran sent me a video link. No subject, no explanation. Just a YouTube preview and the word, "Thought you'd want to see this." I clicked. The thumbnail showed a dimly lit podcast studio. Low budget, but clear audio. The guest was Silas, Callista's ex. I hadn't heard his name in years. The host leaned forward. So, you're saying she manipulated you? Silas exhaled slowly, folding his hands. She didn't just manipulate. She orchestrated. He explained everything. How his name had been used on documents he never saw. how Callista had positioned him as a co-founder on nonprofit boards he'd never stepped foot in. "But when I found out what she did to her sister," he said, voice dropping, "that was industrial-level manipulation. It stopped being clever. It became cruelty." He showed the host printed emails, one with a forged signature, another with Callista giving instructions to her assistant to get the sister's consent later or just send her flowers. The host didn't hide her shock. "You're saying she forged financial access?" He nodded. "She weaponized family. That's what she's always done." The clip went viral in under a day. Nonprofits that had hesitated before now moved quickly, scrubbing Callista's name from legacy plaques, donation tiers, honor rolls. She posted a bland statement. "I deeply regret any confusion caused by past decisions." The comments turned it into a piñata. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I forwarded the clip to Kieran with a simple thumbs-up emoji. 2 days later, I sat in the county records office, pen in hand, as I signed the final revocation of all shared authorizations: power of attorney, co-signing privileges, estate proxies. Every tether between my name and hers dissolved with ink. Kieran looked up as the notary stamped the last page. "You're now legally untangled, fully." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for a decade. "Took 1,000 cuts to get here," I said, "but I'm whole." The next chapter didn't begin with a press release or ribbon cutting. It started in a modest office space with secondhand desks and a handwritten sign: Factual Futures, Financial Literacy for Women. I launched it quietly. No marketing team. Just me and 2 volunteers who'd lived their own versions of economic betrayal. One afternoon, a woman walked in, late 40s. Worn jacket, kind eyes. "I saw your name mentioned," she said. I thought, if she can do it, maybe I can too. I handed her a clipboard. "That's the whole point," I replied. Weeks later, back at my apartment, I stood by the window, watching the city slow into evening. The clutter was gone. So was the feeling that I had to earn my space in this world. On my desk sat one photo, me on graduation day, no family behind me, just me in a cap, squinting into the sun. Next to it, Dad's letter, now laminated. I added a sticky note beside it. "Seen, heard, enough." The inheritance wasn't money. It wasn't real estate or reputation. It was me. I didn't inherit land. I inherited myself. And for the first time, that's enough.